Hello, I'm Robert Kelly, and today on Record All Monsters, Ebirah, Horror of the Deep, and the Changing of the Guard.
My brother's alive. Please send another boat out.
Go ask somebody who has a boat.
Then you don't believe what I say. You must let me see the chief of police right now.
I can't do that. You see, no jurisdiction. You understand, huh?
Officer!
I promised you a big goofy bonfire when we got back, but how does a dance marathon sound to kick off this season? Well, even before the dance marathon, our story begins with Rankin Bass's The King Kong Show, which aired 25 episodes from 1966 to 1969 on ABC. Rankin Bass, then Videocraft Entertainment, was already pretty famous for their animagic stop-motion television specials, 1964's Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer in particular. They also produced traditional hand-drawn animation through partners at Japan's Toei Studios. Popular on both sides of the Pacific, Rankin Bass approached Toho for a live-action tie-in film. Toho put our man Shinichi Sekizawa on the script, and he came up with something very reminiscent of a Saturday morning cartoon. A young man from a rural area comes to the city to look for a boat, intending to search for his shipwrecked brother, who is believed to be dead. He joins up with two other young guys he meets at a dance marathon where the prize is a yacht, and they go down to the shipyard and look at some boats. Ah, boats. I love boats. I know next to nothing about them, I just think they're neat. The three young men climb aboard one yacht. They think it looks very nice, and run into Akira Takarada. Not a lot of talk about monsters yet, huh? That's what Rankin Bass thought too. While the script has a lighter tone, it takes about 15 minutes for our first glimpse of a monster, and that's nothing more than the claw of our mysterious adversary, the kaiju Ebirah, whose name can be very loosely translated as Shrimpzilla. None of this was in The King Kong Show. Neither was the terrorist organization Red Bamboo. Rankin Bass nixed the treatment and commissioned a new script. Not wanting this script to go to waste, it was allegedly repurposed as today's film, Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, or Ebirah, Horror from the Deep, if you're nasty. With their big dogs, Honda, Tsuburaya, and Ifukube working on other projects, Toho put new blood into the creative roles of this film once the script was finished. This included director of the Young Guy series, Jun Fukuda, who went on to direct 4 more films in the Godzilla franchise. Effects director Sadamasa Arikawa, Tsuburaya's protege, who had worked on episodes of Ultra Q and Ultraman as an effects director, and is Tsuburaya's assistant director on nearly every Toho sci-fi movie up to this point. Finally, Akira Ifukube was replaced by Masaru Sato, and his score here is indicative of what Tomoyuki Tanaka was trying to do with this film. That is, something completely different. Specifically, appeal more to teenagers. Sato had scored a Godzilla film before, but he wasn't quite in his element on Godzilla Raids Again. Here Sato is quite himself, using elements of jazz, surf rock, and traditional island music, all of which would be used again as he scored 3 more Godzilla films after this one, creating some of my all-time favorite musical cues in the series' history. Sato's radically different approach to scoring complements Fukuda's dynamic directorial style. Whereas Ishiro Honda had an almost documentary style, Fukuda takes his cues from the action films of the day, while making the most of the island locales created for the film. Erikawa's work diverges less from his predecessors than Fukuda and Sato's, but it does differentiate itself nonetheless. Part of this is due to Haruo Nakajima remaining inside the Godzilla suit. Nakajima had played Godzilla for 12 years at this point, and as such had an established way of portraying the character. Even when he does something outside of what we might consider normal behavior for Godzilla, it's grounded in the history of his portrayal of the character. As well as interest in our female lead is an obvious leftover from this script's days as the King Kong show the movie, we've seen Nakajima's Godzilla do popular dances and curse up a storm while negotiating battle terms with Mothra in the past 2 years. So why couldn't this be just another new facet of the character? Nakajima also choreographed the fight scenes with Hiroshi Sakita, who played the aforementioned Ebirah, and you might remember was the good brown Gargantua Sanda in War of the Gargantuas earlier this same year. They even filmed together underwater, breathing from oxygen tanks off-screen between takes. With fresh talent on their flagship science fiction franchise, Toho and Tomoyuki Tanaka thought they had found a way to keep Godzilla relevant for the rest of the decade. And while Ebirah would sell fewer tickets than Invasion of Astro Monster, its lower budget would make up the difference, ensuring that Fukuda, Arikawa, and Sato would return for the series' next installment. But what about the old guard? Well, they were already hard at work on something king-sized with Rankin Bass.
Well, that island's gone forever.
Yeah, but I wonder if that's the end. The red bamboo still might come back again.
Now you sound like a politician. Well, anyway, maybe I'll go straight from now on.
Oh? Look, Godzilla!
He did escape!
Welcome to Pyramid Scheme, a new Destiny podcast focused on making the Destiny community a more welcome place. I am your Master of Ceremonies, Austin, also known as Forebear online, and joining me is the incredible, the unbreakable, the world champion Titan skating juggernaut, Luminous Havoc, aka Justin. That's right, Austin and Justin, we're two buds here to sit down and gab on about our favorite hobby, Destiny 2 the video game by Bungie Studios LLC. We've been playing Destiny since the beginning, and for the last 5 years, we've mostly done so together. We did drift apart there shortly as I moved over to PC and Justin stayed on Xbox, but thanks to the power of crossplay, we've been reunited and are going to be sitting down weekly to bring you all of the latest news and hottest topics in the world of Destiny. This is Pyramid Scheme.
Hi, this is Catherine Sutherland, the Pink Ranger from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Zeo and Turbo, and you are listening to Record Our Monsters.
Hello, I'm Robert Kelly, host and writer of Record All Monsters, and this is an ad for Anchor. That's right, it's an ad for Anchor, and if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. I was really intimidated at first to start this show until I heard about Anchor, and there were a few things that made me feel more at ease to begin. First of all, it's free. They have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, and Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so that it can be heard on a number of platforms, including whichever one you're listening to it on right now. You can even make a little money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And even their ads are easy. The mandatory call to action is something I can state freely. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Doesn't that feel good? This has been an ad for Anchor, and I've been Robert Kelly, host and writer of Record All Monsters. Hello and welcome back to Record All Monsters. We're very happy for our season premiere to have returning guest John LeMay on. How you doing, John?
I'm doing great. I didn't know this was the season premiere, so I'm honored.
Well, you were such a pleasure to have on last season. We had you on for 2 episodes, and then you recorded the little bit for the award show special. So it's just a great pleasure to get to work with you. It's always fun.
Well, it's always fun to be on Record All Monsters, so anytime.
I'm glad you think so. Well, today, we're talking about Godzilla versus the Sea Monster, and this is your favorite one, you said, right?
Yeah, it is my favorite. I mean, for any Godzilla fan, it's always tough to pick your absolute favorite. So I guess what I'll say, it's basically my favorite. I'm 99% sure it's my favorite, but sometimes I go back and forth between this and Terror of Mechagodzilla. That's another
Uh,
big favorite. So it's tough, but I'm pretty sure Sea Monster's the favorite.
yeah, it's one of mine. I actually didn't see this one when I was a kid. I didn't see it until I was an adult, and I got the TriStar DVD.
Wow, that must have been strange. So you've never even seen the good dub, probably the good dub
Well,
from Titra Studios.
I have now. I recently, sometime in the past year, started. Initially, was just looking for the dubs that are lost otherwise, besides the VHSs. But it's become a whole. Okay, I'm gonna get all the Godzilla movies that were released on VHS on VHS.
Oh, cool. I respect that. I've thrown away a lot of my VHSs by now, and I wish I hadn't have, but
Yeah, I still have my VCR from. I bought one at a thrift store when I was in high school, and I still have that, and I use it fairly regularly, and especially now with the show, so I can get the good dubs, like you said. Uh, let's talk about this dub for a minute, the Titra dub.
yeah, it was tough for me when they put that movie out on the Sony DVD, like you said, because it has the international dub, which is totally different. But the Taitra dub has Hal Linden as the voice of Yoshimura, Akira
Yeah,
Takadara's character,
yeah.
and I can't remember who the other voice actors are, but I mean, you just get used to them. So it's so strange to hear them with different voices. It's not as strange to watch it in the original Japanese for some reason. I think because
Well,
we all just know, yeah. But I mean, when you watch it with totally different voice actors, it's just so strange. But
I watched the Titra dub for the first time a couple of days ago, and it's so much better. Like the voice acting itself is better. The voices the actors use are less obnoxious. They sound more like real people.
yeah, absolutely.
Especially, I forget the comic relief guy's name.
Yeah, is it? Oh gosh, is it Nita?
I
Nita?
think so.
Yeah.
And his voice in the international dub is just so grating,
Yeah.
and he sounds like a real person in this one.
Uh-huh.
Now, we touched briefly in the essay portion of the show on that this was supposedly initially a script for King Kong.
Yeah, and actually, yeah, we don't have to say supposedly anymore. We've come across a couple of different Japanese sources now that confirm it. And
Oh,
yeah, so the one thing that I always wondered about this movie was if it had King Kong, did it always have Mothra in it? And I recently learned that it did always have Mothra in it. She wasn't added in with Godzilla. And the proof came in a TV special that correlated with Ultra Q, and it was called Father of Ultraman, all about Eiji Tsuburaya. And he does mention a project coming up with King Kong and Mothra. And at first I read
ah,
that. Yeah, I read it somewhere, and I was kind of worried maybe they got the translation wrong, but I found the clip and watched it, and he does say like Kingu Kongu and Mosura, so
yeah,
he says it. So apparently she was always in it, but that's pretty cool. I was glad to finally confirm that.
that's
What we
really
yeah.
really fascinating. Go on, you were saying.
I was just gonna say, we kind of the one thing we always wonder about is whether or not the movie was Toho's idea by themselves, or if Rankin Bass, the producers of the King Kong show,
Hmm.
pitched it to him first. And different people go back and forth, but it seems most likely that Rankin Bass did approach Toho first, and then Toho wrote their own scenario, which Rankin Bass didn't like, and that's why they scrapped it and went for King Kong Escapes instead.
Right. Now, I always just assumed that Rankin Bass would have been the ones to approach Toho, since Toho had the movie rights for King Kong at the time. So it would have been less of a hurdle for Rankin Bass to put a movie out.
Yes, and I don't think Toho had like exclusive rights to King Kong. As far as I know, I think anybody could have went to RKO and paid the licensing fee.
Right.
What?
And I feel like that since they were already working in Japan for the show with Toei, that instead of licensing it again, getting a partner.
Yeah, and who knows? Like I even in the, let's see, around that same time period, I don't remember which studio it was, but there was a studio making a movie about the San Francisco earthquake of 1906, and it was one of the big ones like Paramount or 20th Century Fox, and they actually approached Subaraya about doing the effects for that. So I guess at that time they did get approached occasionally by American film producers about doing the special effects work.
I didn't know that about the San Francisco.
Yeah, that's a recent discovery by Jules Kurosa, who's the author of SF, the Japanese sci-fi encyclopedia. I think I'm getting the name right, as far as the name of the book. But yeah, he did some newspaper research recently, and he's the first person to find that. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, that's fantastic. All this, you've given me so much new information. We've only been talking for 8 minutes. So this, like you said, this is one of your favorites. Can you elaborate on that? Just tell me some of the stuff that, puts it over the top for you.
So I think the reason why it's one of my favorites is similar to what Stuart Galbraith said about it, which was that if you removed the monsters from the movie, you'd still have a pretty good movie. And that's not true of most Godzilla flicks.
No.
And I'm never one to like fast forward through the people parts or anything like that. I enjoy those too. It's just this one had a better storyline for the human protagonist, and it really shows. And the other big thing for me that it did better than Monster Zero in particular, I was always a little disappointed in the ending of Monster Zero because there's not a lot of suspense to it. They blow up all the flying saucers, and then Godzilla and Rodan, you already know they're going to beat Ghidorah because they beat him earlier in the movie. So I really felt like that one lacks suspense. But this one, it's like they've got to work against the clock to get off the island before it explodes. The editing is just spectacular, where it intercuts between Godzilla fighting Ebirah, them trying to defuse the bomb, then you've got the castaways building their net, and then you've also got Mothra on the island. So you've got 4 different things you cut back and forth between. And it actually kind of reminds me of some of George Lucas's Star Wars movies. They would have multiple climaxes kind of happening at once, where you'd have like Luke Skywalker on the Death Star, then you'd have Lando Calrissian in the Millennium Falcon, then you had Han Solo down on Endor. So it kind of reminds me of that, how it cuts back and forth.
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually just thinking that when you were bringing up how it was cut that way from the 4 different perspectives. This is, I think, you were talking about, especially in comparison to Monster Zero, which was one of my favorites as a kid. And now when I watch it, I always wonder what kept my attention when I was, 8.
Yeah.
But I feel like after they do the payoff with the brother-in-law's invention, the rest of the movie just happens too quick. Like all the pacing gets thrown off and everything. And
exactly.
Just, I think, yeah. And Jun Fukuda's background as an action director, I think, probably had a lot to do with that.
Yeah, and around that same time, he had just done a kind of a Japanese version of James Bond called 100 Shot, 100 Killed with Akira Takarada. And I think if you like Sea Monster, it's worth tracking down. That movie, which has the international title, I think, of Iron Finger, and then there's a sequel called 100 Shot, 100 Killed Golden Eye, which is pretty decent as well. So If you want to see Akira Takarada kind of play James Bond, definitely check those films out.
And Akihiko Harata's the bad guy in that 100 Shot, 100 Killed, right?
Yes, actually, they have not like the identical same cast, but quite a few of the same actors are in it. Like I think one of them's name is Chotaro Togan.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever the guy is that played Achino is in it. A lot of those little minor players are in it, and but yeah, and just a lot of Toho players in general.
Yeah, I think it's interesting just with the new creatives coming in. How much stayed the same and how much, more it opens up, for people like us who are fans of these movies, how much more it opens up stuff outside of Godzilla and even Tokusatsu that becomes available when Jun Fukuda, Masuro Sato. Like he did that was the composer, and he did the music for a lot of Akira Kurosawa films.
Yeah, and it's nice to. I mean, I like variety, especially in a series that's so long running. Because Godzilla's kind of like James Bond's, where you've got, because there's Bond movies where it's like you've got an underwater theme like Thunderball, then you've got the space theme with Moonraker. I think Godzilla is pretty similar.
No, I completely agree with that. And this is actually, I bring up Sato. This is one of my favorite scores of all the Godzilla scores across all the series, all the movies. Just that it's so different.
Yeah, I even like that little dance tune that the American dub removed where Godzilla's fighting the jets and they play this little dance number. I thought it was funny.
Yes.
I kind of liked it.
No, it that works. That works for me because the movie is so playful, it's so fun. That just works. It feels like it belongs there.
Yeah, well, and I guess to return to James Bond, Godzilla 54 to like let's say Mothra versus Godzilla, I guess is kind of like the Sean Connery Bond where it's a much more serious character. And then maybe Ghidorah and Sea Monster kind of are more like Roger Moore, where he's a funny character.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And then you get into like the late Roger Moore era where things start getting crazy, and they're fun, entertaining movies, but they're a far cry from Dr. No, and it's
Yeah.
And so this is probably starting my favorite stretch of Godzilla movies. These late Showa movies. Especially, I love the Jun Fukuda ones, even though he hated them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's where we're going to stop this part of the show, and when we come back, we'll do the game show. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Godzilla, Ebirah, and Mothra in one of the most explosive action pictures ever to hit the screen. From the depths of the ocean comes the most terrifying horror of the deep. From within the mountain caves comes the dreaded monster Godzilla. See the most titanic battle ever screened when the monster of the deep challenges the mighty Godzilla.
Welcome back once again. We're still here with John LeMay. How you doing over there, John?
I'm hanging in there. I'm just sweating it out about this game because I know the movies pretty well, but I don't know the comics very well of what we're going to talk about. So
yeah, so this game is called I was about to ask you, how are you on comic books? This game is called Changing of the Guardians of the Galaxy.
yeah, I not big on comic books. I'm the type of person I'll read the comic book history on Wikipedia, just to kind of get a sense of it before I see the movie, because I'm always curious how they adapt the comics into the film. So yeah, with Guardians, I only know the films, but I love the films a lot, so I remember those pretty well.
The films are great. They're probably my favorite contemporary blockbusters. Those two specifically, not necessarily the Marvel movies, but
Yeah.
um, behind the scenes of today's movie, the main creative forces of the Godzilla franchise were shifted. A changing of the guard, if you will. However, some of the team stayed the same, with Tomiyuki Tanaka as producer, Haruo Nakajima as Godzilla, and Shinichi Sekizawa as screenwriter, carrying over from the previous set of films. Long-running teams like this frequently change out members, both in real life and in fiction. So in today's game, Changing of the Guardians of the Galaxy, we'll be looking at team lineups from Marvel Comics' roving gang of space weirdos. Here's how it works. I'll give you the name of a character from Marvel Comics, and ask if they have ever been a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy in the comics, specifically. There will be no prizes if you win. There will be no penalties if you lose. The stakes have never been lower. All right, are you ready to begin?
I'm ready.
Let's do it. So, has Kitty Pryde ever been a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy?
I remember she's one of the X-Men. That's about as much as I remember about
Yes.
Kitty Pryde. I'm gonna say no.
Oh, but she has.
Wow.
She was their leader for 19 issues up through the crossover event Civil War II. And not only that, she married Peter Quill in the comics.
Oh wow.
It was not
Yeah,
a
I had
happy
no idea.
marriage. All right, so are you familiar that they have a TV series on Disney Plus coming up with Moon Knight?
Yeah, I vaguely know who Moon Knight is.
Do you know if he's ever been a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy?
I'm just gonna keep saying no till I get one right.
Well, you got one right.
Oh, thank goodness.
Not at the time of this writing, anyway. But with his newfound popularity, who knows what the future may bring.
Yeah.
I am looking forward to that series. The weirder and more obscure they can get these guys, the better. Speaking of weirder and more obscure, let's go the opposite way. Has Tony Stark, the Iron Man, ever been a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy?
Now that I feel like I remember, not from the movies, but in the comics, I do seem to remember, I think, them making him one of the Guardians, and I almost think that they did that in the comics on purpose, just because the movies were so popular, and maybe they were thinking about having him in one of their movies. But anyway, yeah, I'm gonna say yes. I'm pretty confident that if he wasn't a member of the team, I feel like he was in some issues of Guardians of the Galaxy after the success of the Iron Man movie, kind of around Phase 1 and Phase 2.
Yes, you're right. Your reasoning
Okay.
is exactly right as well.
Okay, good.
Within the comics, though, it wasn't to bring more people over to a book that was going to be adapted soon. It was that he decided he needed to better understand threats coming from outer space, so he joined up with the Guardians. And that run was written by Brian Michael Bendis, who created Miles Morales.
Oh, okay.
And Miles Morales has nothing to do with the next question. Has any version of Ghostwriter ever been a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy?
Instead of saying no, I'll say yes on this one.
You're right, and this one's pretty recent. It's specifically the Cosmic Ghostwriter, who is actually the Punisher from an alternate Earth.
Interesting.
Basically, Thanos came to Earth and won in this alternate reality and killed everyone but the Punisher, who went insane due to his isolation, sold his soul to the devil, and then joined up with Galactus, and he's now Ghostwriter in space. And they brought him over to the main continuity where he's, I think as of last year, he isn't anymore, but he was in the Guardians for quite a while.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious Marvel loves to just throw characters in there, and I like it. I think it's cool. I love comic book history.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And this Cosmic Ghostwriter character, That actually got me to start reading comics again a few years ago. I hadn't for some time, and it was just so bonkers that I couldn't not read it.
Yeah.
And our last question, John, you've done really well, actually. You've only missed one at this point, so you've already won. Has Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, ever been a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy?
He seems like a pretty good fit for that, because since I can't remember if Johnny Storm could fly in space or not. I would think in real life, since there's no oxygen, his flames couldn't survive, but that's comic book logic, so who knows? Since I've said yes the past couple times, I'll go ahead and say no.
Man, your instincts are dead on. No,
Wow.
He hasn't.
Okay, good.
But fellow Fantastic Four member Ben Grimm, the Thing, was a member until the end of the Civil War II crossover, where when they got stranded on Earth, he joined S.H.I.E.L.D.
I can see Ben Grimm interacting with Drax. I could see them interacting.
That would be terrific. I actually haven't read Civil War II, so I don't know how that goes. But I think, especially the way Dave Bautista plays Drax, that would be a lot of fun. But once again, you're still undefeated on our game show. I think you're the only repeat guest who has not lost.
Wow, I can't believe it.
Well, that's going to do it for the show today. Thank you so much, John. Do you have any new projects coming up you want to tell us about?
I will plug. It's kind of new. It's from the past summer of 2021, since we talked about Sea Monster. I have a little fanzine digest magazine I do called the Lost Films Fanzine Presents Movie Milestones. Or you probably should just type in Movie Milestones #5 on Amazon, and that issue is all devoted to Godzilla versus the Sea Monster. Has lots of pictures in it. It's got reviews of 100 shot, 100 killed in it. Just all sorts of minutia and trivia related to Godzilla versus the Sea Monster. So again, that's Movie Milestones #5.
Movie Milestones #5. You know, it's funny. I actually got that one because it was my birthday back at the end of the summer, and my sister was like, "Oh, you know this guy. You like Godzilla. Let me grab this for you."
Oh, cool.
So, yes, it's very good. I heartily recommend.
Oh, thank you.
So, once again, I'll see y'all on the other side, and thank you, John.
Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed it.
And with that, we've completed the first episode of Season 2. A couple things have gone on in the off time. Of course, we've been reading the King Kong novelization, which has some problematic elements. We're skipping over those as we can. We've also started a Patreon in the meantime. No one, of course, is under any obligation to pay us anything. However, I've tried to keep the tiers pretty reasonable. There's a $1 tier, a $5 tier, and a $10 tier. And they have cute little monster names and all that stuff. So if you are in a position that you can let $1 fall out of your pocket and not be too worried about it, maybe give us $1 a month. But you don't have to, and I'm not gonna bring it up very often. Just know that it's there. If less regular contributions are your thing, I think we also have a Ko-Fi. I think it's pronounced Ko-Fi. Courtney said it's pronounced coffee. Which... Anyway. So yes, we're back. And next week, there will be another chapter of King Kong. We're going to keep reading that until we finish it in the off weeks, as long as there isn't a quick look or special planned. Record All Monsters is a production of Noble Walrus Media and is produced by Courtney Meissner-Kelly and Robert L. Kelly. Today's essay, The Changing of the Guard, was written by Robert L. Kelly as was today's game, Changing of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Special thanks to our guest, John LeMay. Check out the link to his Amazon author page in our description. Next week, we return to the Gameraverse with Return of the Giant Monsters, aka Gamera vs. Gyaos. Between now and then, remember that monsters are your friends.
Welcome to Pyramid Scheme, a new Destiny podcast focused on making the Destiny community a more welcome place. I am your Master of Ceremonies, Austin, also known as Forebear online, and joining me is the incredible, the unbreakable, the world champion Titan skating juggernaut, Luminous Havoc, aka Justin. That's right, Austin and Justin, we're two buds here to sit down and gab on about our favorite hobby, Destiny 2 the video game by Bungie Studios LLC. We've been playing Destiny since the beginning, and for the last 5 years, we've mostly done so together. We did drift apart there shortly as I moved over to PC and Justin stayed on Xbox, but thanks to the power of crossplay, we've been reunited and are going to be sitting down weekly to bring you all of the latest news and hottest topics in the world of Destiny. This is Pyramid Scheme.